So hello friends, this is the second video in the tutorial series, the tutorial for Euler Math Toolbox. I'm the author of Euler Math Toolbox, René Grothmann is my name. I will explain in this tutorial the interface of Euler. As you see, it's a very simple interface, consists of a menu and consists of a notebook, text plane, and the status line and some sliders. And there is also a graphics window. Well, first of all, let me show you how to execute commands. For instance, if you want to compute something, you can just enter it here, and the result will be in black below the command line. This is a command line, and this is an output line. You can position the cursor back here and do some more computation, change it, and you don't have to put the cursor to the end of the line to execute. You can just execute the command line at any position. Now, while we are at it, let us also do a longer command line like this. 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. This can be computed more easily with sum 1 to 10, by the way. So how do we delete a command line? We press Alt backspace. All these keys are explained, by the way, in the help. So open help window, make sure here's an empty line, and you get the keyboard commands explained all here. You can read that and try it. It's just an example. If you want a new command line, you can insert it by pressing Alt Insert, and Alt Backspace will delete it. So assume now we want to split this into two lines because it's too long. Then we use Control Return. This is now a multi-line, so this line is joined together by these three dots to the previous line, so this is one command line actually. If you change that, you can change it at any position, and it will execute the complete command line no matter where the cursor is. You can join that back by pressing Control Backspace. Yeah, so Control Return will split it, and maybe enter some spaces here. The spaces don't matter in expressions. So much about entering expressions and the command line. Now we have learned command lines and command output, and I need to teach you some more tricks. You can enter several commands in one line. An example would be setting a variable like a7. So if you put it like this, the output will be 7. We can suppress the output with the semicolon. So there is no longer an output. And we can just do any computation with A, and we have now two expressions in one line. And if we want to have three expressions where the second expression should have an output, we do it this way. You can enter a comma here if you wish, or not enter a comma, does not matter. So now we have three commands: an assignment, which suppressed output, and two other commands in the same line. Well, now assume we want to execute everything here. Now let's first make another example. Let's do something with brackets. So if we enter brackets, Euler will show you where the brackets start and end. And let's take that to the power a plus 4. This is of course a very large number, and this is the power sign to the power, and a multiplication would be that. Now let's divide it by a plus 5, and we get this result. Euler prints 12 digits of the internal 16 digits by default. Now, if you put the cursor in front of a bracket, you will see the end of the bracket. Each time this helps to keep care of the brackets. So make sure you see that. Now assume you want to change everything here in this section because you have changed the variable of a. You can just simply re-execute the two commands by pressing return, but you can also press shift return, and the commands in the section of the notebook will be re-executed. What's a section? A section is something which is split by an empty line or a header. Let's talk about headers. Euler has a Markdown language for text. You press F5 at the command line where you want to have the header or the text and enter it like this. Let me show you how this looks like. You can press Tab to go to the OK, and then press return to execute that. So now we have a header and a paragraph. By default, this is 80 characters long, and you should leave it like this so that notebooks look the same on all computers. Now, this command editor is comment editor, sorry, is very mighty. So if you have a long paragraph, it will be broken here accordingly. It can also contain LaTeX formula if you have LaTeX installed, and Euler can access it. Let's do an example. Doesn't really matter what I enter here. You will see that it is typed by LaTeX. So a notebook can contain these kind of headers and command lines and output so far. And it can also contain a special comment which looks like this and is a bar. And the section is between these two. So if you execute the section with shift return, everything will be executed between those two headers. A notebook can also contain plots. Let's do a plot. Simply like that. And we get the plot result in the graphics window. You can hide this graphics window by pressing Ctrl G, and it will be gone for small screens, etc. In this case, you can still see the graphics by pressing the Tab key. So you see the graphics here. The default graphics is square, by the way. Let's press Ctrl G again, so we have the graphics window here. The default is square, but you can change that. So, how can a notebook contain this output? By entering a column here, and then the graphics will be put into the notebook window, and this is another item that the notebook can contain. By the way, you can resize this window as you like it, and all other windows, and Euler will remember the positions. It will also remember the position of the comment editor. So let's press F5 here, so the position is remembered. A plot. Okay. So we learned that notebooks can contain graphics too. They can also contain functions, multi-line functions, but I will go into this in another video. To see a more complex example, let's open a tutorial and not save that. A first welcome, for instance. And you see a lot of comments, and you also see spell checking. You can spell check in English and also in German. And to use your own language, you need a dictionary. It's a rather simple thing. So here we have a LaTeX formula. Here we have a plot, a more complicated LaTeX formula, and another plot, 3D plot, and lots of headings. And this is a subheading, by the way. Let's check that. We go to this line and press F5. You can, by the way, click just into this comment and it will automatically go to that line. There's another trick, by the way. If you have an empty line like this with two comments signed, this is a comment. And that's an empty comment. If you have such a line, it will be hidden by default. So let's check the comment editor here. 2 stars mean a subcommand. If you insert something, it will come out in the HTML web export in a special form. So this, by the way, is a link. Let's check that. See reference. How do you learn about the comments? Again, you press the help and make it somewhere else, and you can also find the comments here somehow. Comments. Yeah, this is a short version of the browser version of the help sections about comment. Okay, let me teach you about the menu. Well, briefly, if you open the file menu, you have the usual open save. Open means you open a new window, and open a second window means you open a second window of Euler Math Toolbox. It's a second instance of Euler Math Toolbox, which shows that it is a second window, so you don't accidentally use the same notebook in 2 windows. Open tutorials or examples I already showed you. These are the installed tutorials and examples, and open in Euler files opens in your Euler file program. Let's close that. Now saving, let's save that as on our desktop. I will show you as something called test. This is because there is already such a notebook, and I use save as, and you can transfer the notebook to this new position. And I want to keep that, of course, the old one. So this is my save test notebook, and these are the images which are in that notebook. They are saved in a subdirectory images by default. And if I close that, I can open by double-click the same notebook. Now you can execute this by just going through it, or pressing Shift Return will execute the section. Let's do some plots. For instance, this one, and add the Taylor series here like this. We now can save this graphics as in various formats. I use PNG, and let's do that for print with not anti-aliasing it, and press OK and save it on the desktop. So here is my PNG file. It's quite large. This is the picture view of Windows, and it has 2000 times 2000 pixels, which is enough for most word processing stuff. Okay, so much about saving and loading graphics. You can also directly print. This should no longer be used. Don't use that. The recent files, yeah, here are the recent files that you have and you have saved, and these are deleted if they are no longer present. Here are some edit commands, and I won't go into this. You should really read the introduction or the tutorial or the documentation or the tutorial that comes with Euler. The edit command we already knew. A start internal editor. Well, you can add a multi-line or a function with the so-called internal editor. But let me start a new notebook. First, So if we start the internal editor, we get an editor like this, and just delete that and enter something 4 plus 5, press OK, and it will save a file in your Euler temporary directory, and it will load it automatically. I will go into this once I talk about in a tutorial about Euler files. So this is an external file which contains the command 4 plus 5, like a script. And there is also the external editor which does the same, but you need to implement or set an external editor. Export current notebook to HTML. This works, and let me demonstrate that. New notebook, and let's do a plot. Insert that and a simple test, a plot like this, and let's export that file, extras, export to HTML, and leave it like this, and we save the notebook, and let's call that S or whatever. So what do I have? I have a notebook S from EN and a HTML file, which you see here. So this is the export. It uses the default cascading style sheets of Euler. You can change that too. Yeah, well, generate PDF with LaTeX. You can do that, and we generate a PDF file of that using LaTeX. I don't know if I should demonstrate this because, yeah, here it is. So this is Acrobat Reader now, and I have generated this with LaTeX. So this is Euler Math style, which is a style file needed for LaTeX, and this is the output, and that is the text source code. You have all that. Okay, what else? Spell check. You can turn that on or off, and you have currently languages English and German, but you can change that easily by replacing German, for instance, with your language. But you need a list of words, simply a list of words. Insert function definition or something. I don't talk about this now. Show graphics is a tab key. I told you about that. And here we have a lot of settings, and I should go into this well, in more detail, but probably you will have to read the documentation. Something interesting is full screen. If you press F11, Euler will fill the complete screen. This is useful for small notebooks and so. And you can also magnify for presentation by pressing Control F11. Everything gets magnified. The plot does not look as nicely as before because it is simply stretched. Well, user menu are the loaded Euler files, and you get help about them. And these are tasks. Very interesting feature, I think. Assume you want to plot, you go to planar plots and you get a list of examples. I think this helps a lot. Much better than I can solve equations. Let's solve this. You solve this equation. In Maxima, we get this result, or some numerical solution. You just copy and paste from here to there. Help files. You can open the help window. I showed you that. And you can open the homepage of the documentation and read all the examples. And these are just HTML exports of some notebook that I did. You have billiard on usual tables, for instance. This is billiard on a circular table. and lots of astronomical function and all the things that I did. This is done. This is the web page in the web, and the download link of Euler is can be found here. Download. Well, what else? Here you can check for updates now, and if there's no response, you have the most current version. Check for updates. Open tutorials now. Check for what is new in this version. Yeah, this will open the current changes. Yeah, your program version is up to date now. Okay, I did that twice, and it took a while to load. So let's delete all that and finish our first introduction into the Euler interface, user interface, which is quite mighty, even though it looks easy and simple. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something.